Hello, Claire.
Hello, Vincent.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. I'm still feeling better with this CBD, so I'm feeling much better.
So your mood is not. So you just feel normal,
Kind of, yes.
right?
But
And usually you, I don't know, what usually you feel high. I mean,
no, usually
what
I feel depressed.
what are you depressed about?
Well, I guess it's just chemistry, I guess. Bad biochemistry I inherited.
Oh, you mean people just feel depressed for no reason?
Well, some
Is
people
it?
feel depressed for biochemical problems, like, they have bad brain chemistry. Some people are depressed because of environmental things, but lots of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I guess people in the olden days would call it the blues.
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems that, from age to age, we have a different name for these things. But maybe the problem is the same.
Well, I think some of it is biochemical and I think some of it is environmental for most people. I mean, it depends on who you are.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people are depressed about their government and their future. If worrying about people's future would cause depression, wouldn't it? Or
Yes,
maybe mourning about your past.
yes, of course. Well, anyway, I started a new blog. I have a new blog. It's in the title of the screen. It's at the bottom of the screen. It's the armstrongmystery.blogspot.com. And I got into Armstrongism when I did Noahide pyramidology. So we've talked a lot about pyramidology and things like that. But for those, when you go to armstrongmystery.blogspot.com, you'll find a link to Noahide pyramidology.blogspot.com. And pyramidology was basically the belief that was being spread by Freemasons and by other and their derivative cults that the pyramids could be esoterically written, read in Bible code to predict the future and things like that. And this was mixed up with British Israelism, the fact that the idea that the British people would rule the world with the Jews from Israel, and that the British people were the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Now Armstrong got involved in that pyramidology craze.
Can you tell
Arm,
us a bit about Armstrong? I mean, his background and stuff.
yes, Herbert Armstrong founded the Worldwide Church of God, and it was a mix of Jehovah's Witness, Mormon, and Seventh Day Adventist. Rejects the Trinity and things like that. But where I got interested in this is that he picked up. Okay, so he comes out of Freemason derived cults: Jehovah's Witness, Mormon, Seventh Day Adventist, all come out of Freemasonry. Um, he picks up Freemason, pyramidology, and British Israelism. He goes British Israelist. But then I found in the church's publications anti-Freemason works. So basically, this new blog that I only have one blog post on right now. It's the first one. It's a book that I found, the anti-Freemason book. But um, I'm trying to figure out how they went from picking up Freemason ideas and being so closely associated with Freemasonry, and why they actually took the time to write a whole anti-Freemason treatise. Now, I haven't read it. The name of the book is The Truth About Masonry by Jack R. Elliott, and it was published. It was published at the time of his. It was published at the time that um, Herbert Armstrong was alive.
Right, so he's basically he basically produced a cult of cults, right? That's really what he did.
Yes, he stole everyone else's ideas and brought it together, and he was less successful. I think he predicted the end of the world in 1975. Actually, let's look at the Wikipedia for the Armstrongism. Are you looking him up?
Yes, I'm looking at his Wikipedia entry now.
Yes. There's a Wikipedia on him and on Armstrongism, which is supposedly his teaching. He came out of the Millerites, Seventh Day. Let's see where his doctrinal differences: God and family, church authority, Sabbatarian and old beliefs. So I think you have to keep the Sabbath. Yes, okay, you have to observe the Sabbath. You have to keep a lot of the Old Testament laws. Are also taught converts to do the same. Eventually, Armstrong accepted and observed many principles and laws which are found in the Old Testament. So he was keeping them, the dietary laws, tithing. Like Jehovah's Witnesses, he gave up Christmas and Easter and said that they were pagan, which they are. Let's see when he predicted end of the world. Let's see. End of world. Let's say, is there apocalypse? 1975 in Prophecy, Armstrong book describing an uncertain timeline for the Book of Revelation's impending apocalypse. Oh, notable publications. So let's see. I know he. Wait, hold on. He did.
He was very wealthy.
He was.
Yes, I mean, he had a personal jet, the finest clothes, furniture, and other conveniences.
So he might.
He lived in extravagant wealth in comparison to a few church members.
Okay, I'm looking at this. Okay, wait. The AI is telling me, yes, he did predict the end of the world. Armstrong made the last try predicting the end of the world in 1975, but like Jehovah's Witnesses, it seems like he had it seems like he had like precursors, or did it several times and it didn't work, and then he covered it up and say, well, that wasn't the real end, it was only the spiritual end. And so he was setting dates for the end. I don't know what it had at its peak. It seems these days the Worldwide Church of God has changed its name, dropped British Israelism, and only has about 30,000 members. But there are break-off groups that I want to research that broke off and still keep British Israelism to this day. And there's actually named churches in Wikipedia when you look that up, either in Armstrongism or whatever. I have these ready to go. I'm going to be posting them on the blog and stuff like that. But I think it's a little quirk in this mystery of just how Freemasonry played through these cults. Whenever we get into these cults, we always find Freemasonry, Jehovah's Witness, Mormon, Seventh-day Adventist, Christian Science, now Armstrongism, which is related to them. And also, so but I'm trying to find out his position about the Jews in Israel, because he did write an article, which I have not published yet, on when Israel did some kind of big war move over there in the 60s or 70s or something like that. And he seemed to be saying that they were going to rebuild that temple, but the Antichrist was going to come into it. I think he kind of, I don't know, I have to find out his position on the Jews. I think that's very important. And right now, like all of these people, it's always underplayed. I noticed that all these religions have a place for the Jews in their narrative, but they don't like to talk about it or advertise it very much. It's like a secret doctrine, what about the Jews? What's their role?
Yeah. Well, I mean, British Israelism is about the Jews. So it's supersessionary in that these Gentiles are basically saying, we want to be the Jews who are going to replace the Jews, and our religion is better than theirs. I mean, that's the common theme, isn't it?
Well, they want to, in British Israelism, they want to co-rule with the Jews. So British Israelism, the British Empire and America are responsible for getting the Jews as Jews back to Israel. And then once they get the Jews back to Israel, the Jews will become Christians and the Jews and the British will rule the world together.
Yes, I mean this is what's happening now. This idea of messianic Jews. They're really Christians. It's just Christianity for Jews, right?
Mm-hmm.
What they do is they don't bother making Jews believe in the Trinity. They just say, well, you're a Jew, aren't you? And the Jew says, yes. And Jesus is a Jew, isn't he? And then the Jew says, yes. And it's like, well, we believe Jesus is coming back and we welcome you into our church. How about it? And Jews get special privileges in our church. And I guess a Jew just gets, suckered along into it.
Well, actually, no, the Jews were not impressed with British Israelism and British Israelist pyramidology. In the 1906 Jewish Encyclopedia, they said that British Israelist pyramidology was absurd and they called it absurd. They were very much against it. And I've gone through all of this stuff on British Israelism, and it's all the Freemasons talking about wanting to rule the world with the Jews. There were no Jews that were interested in ruling the world with the Freemasons. The Jews did not support British Israelism in any way, shape, or form.
Well, they wouldn't because it's such a clear attempt to hijack their religion. So they wouldn't want that to happen, and I guess they would be quite used to it happening over the centuries. People are just the Gentiles always coming along to take their scripture, take their God, and put their own twist on the narrative that they don't agree with. So I suppose while they don't like it, it's something that they have become used to over the centuries.
Yes,
And
but they weren't. Look, the Jews. Okay, for the first. Okay, I don't know if the Jews are smart or stupid for what they did. The Jews had an opportunity when British Israelism was a craze. This is what I'm thinking. The Freemasons are Noahites, and they wanted to find a way to get the Jews to Israel no matter what. British Israelism, I really do not believe that intelligent, educated Freemasons thought that they were the 10 lost tribes of Israel. I think this was just a plot that stupid people were believing this. And so the Freemasons said, okay, they're dumb, but this plan will get the Jews to Israel for us. If the people are dumb enough to believe this, let's just go along with it and get the Jews to Israel. Now, if the Jews had been smart, they would have played along, I think, and would have said, yes, okay, get us to Israel. But they didn't play along for their own reasons. Maybe they were more long-term. Maybe they didn't want to have that complication. Maybe they said, well, once we get to Israel, we don't want to be co-ruling with the British Empire. We don't want to even...
Sorry, can you say what you think the Jews should have done about British Israelism?
Well, not what they should have done, but they could have played along with British Israelism and gotten a free ride back to Israel.
Oh, you mean Zionists?
Yeah.
Well, I guess Israel wasn't much of a place at the time. It was, full of Arabs and other Jews, and maybe a lot of the Jews who were happily living in Europe didn't want to go anywhere else.
This was big. This was around Herzl's time. Jews were talking about going back to Israel. They just didn't like British Israelism.
Yeah, I suppose, maybe some of them had principles, thinking, well, we don't want to tell all these lies just to get our homeland. Can't we just get our homeland back without having to subscribe to their nonsense?
Well, yes, that's what I think the Jews thought. I think that was the Jews' thing, was they're saying this is rubbish, this is garbage, this is absurd, we have nothing to do with this. And I'm going to look further. I want to look into the Jewish side of British Israelism, but Jews are interested in their own Zionism. And I told you they worked with Charles Taze Russell, the founder of Jehovah's Witness, because he was the only non-British Israelist around. And he was saying, send the Jews to Israel as they are, and they don't have to convert, and they can stay Jews forever and ever.
Why did he say that?
Because he believed Bible prophecy said the Jews would rule from Israel and everyone else would be non-Trinitarian Christian Gentiles.
Right, but it seems that these empires, have their own, that they feel they have to say something about Israel because, well, in a way it's inevitable because, these Christians culturally appropriated the scripture of the Jews, so they kind of have to take on their narrative. So, so I think currently these Christian Zionists in America feel they have to protect Israel, but maybe it's just the American government, trying to calm down these Gentiles who might otherwise get angry about, why are we paying all that money to Israel? For what? And then the government says, oh, it's because we have to protect Israel, because we are, it's our responsibility now because the British can't do, they couldn't do it, and because they lost their empire, and now we have to do it, and that's our job. So it gives American foreign policy in the Middle East some kind of moral standing, some kind of moral and religious standing. So that's what I think it's all about. Otherwise, it's just the Americans,
But this plot, look, British Israelism has really fallen out of favor, but that plot was before Israel was even formed. It wasn't like we were sending taxes over there at the time. I mean, this is a different story than modern day people trying to come up with a story. As to why we should be funding Israel. This is more of an 100 years old plot to get the Jews to Israel and to keep them there.
Well, I mean, obviously, if it's going to be an American colonial outpost, it will need to be peopled. Now, there's this Bible, whose name I've forgotten now, that gives a story about that supports Christian Zionism. Do you know what I'm talking about? This Bible, I've forgotten now.
What Bible? What are you talking about? Say it again.
There's a special Bible that supports Christian Zionism.
Well, if it's the one that supports... Oh, the Scofield Bible.
That's the one, yes. I mean, that supports American Christian Zionism, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does. That's the Bible all the Christian Zionists use.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's see how old that is. I think Scofield came in a little bit later. Scofield Reference Bible. At the beginning of the 20th century. Published by Oxford Press. Okay, it appeared in 1909 and was revised by the author in 1917. So 1909, that was when British Israelism was starting to die out. So this was just... Wait, is the Scofield Bible have anything to do with Freemasonry? Let's just say... Let's see if the Scofield Bible has anything to do with Masonry. Liberty Scofield Bibles marked with Masonic symbolism. List of Scofield Bible titles that are marked with point within a circle Masonic symbolism. Click on the link to see the point with a circle Masonic symbol on each cover. Let me see this. I don't say what they're talking about here. Oh, point within a circle. Oh, okay. So they're just saying, okay, never mind. These are people that they're trying. I mean, they're stretching. They're trying to. I'm trying to look and see if there's any real conspiracy between Scofield and Masons.
Well, I think Masons were is about Jews and Muslims ganging up on Christians when it's safe to do so, to tell them off about their idolatry. And I think the day must be coming closer.
Okay, well, on this even, it doesn't seem like there's many even conspiracy websites saying the Schofield is Masonic, which surprises me.
Well, I would have thought that the Masons would be kind of, trying to marginalize Christian accounts.
Well, from what I'm looking right here, it doesn't seem like anyone's investigated any connections between Schofield and Masonry.
So you think Schofield might have been a Mason?
No, well, there's nothing here to say that.
But yeah, I mean, I'm saying that the Masons would, be looking to reject Christian narratives. Because I have a theory about the Masons, which is that it is about, the monotheists, the Trinity rejecting monotheists, biding their time until it is right for them, these Jews and Muslims, to inform Christians that their religion is idolatry and blasphemy.
Well, I do have that blog that connects Islam and Freemasonry. It is islamfreemasonry.blogspot.com. islamfreemasonry.blogspot.com. I have a whole thing on the connections between Islam, esoteric Islam, and Freemasonry. So if you're interested in that.
Well, I know that, what am I trying to say? I know Muslims don't like Masons. And I remember Mr. Palu, when he was being over enthusiastic about his Masonry.
Who was being over enthusiastic about his
Mr. Palu.
Oh, yes. I talked to him the other day, yes.
Well, there was a time when he was a very active Mason, and he was always talking about it and boasting about it, and I noticed that some Muslims really didn't approve of his Masonry. Perhaps they think it's something Jewish. I mean, the way Christians talk. That's it then.
Yes, of course. No, Hamas. There's yes, the Muslim world has always associated Freemasonry with Judaism. Yes.
Right. And any particular reason?
They're Noahides.
Okay, so Muslims don't approve of Noahides because they think.
Okay, no. Okay, no, they don't dislike Freemasonry because Freemasons are Noahides. Freemasons are Noahides, which shows their involvement with Zionism. And also the idea that Freemasons always wanted to rebuild Solomon's temple in Israel. So there's a connection. But they don't dislike Freemasons because they're Noahides. They dislike Freemasons because they're connected with Jews.
But the thing is, if you have an empire, you would want to, you would want Israel to be one of your, territories, wouldn't you? Because it would kind of show that, you've arrived. Like, wow, I've got Israel, the Holy Land, the land holy to the God of Israel, that everybody knows, or the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims believe to have created the universe. Aren't I cool? Aren't I great? And I think, whoever gets to administer Israel as an empire will be conscious of this status. So they'll all be, kind of, oh, I really love being the one to, to call Israel mine. Because there's a lot of unacknowledged snobbery about the whole thing, and I think Israel is the kind of billionaire's yacht in the, you know, the well, if you want to equate imperialism with being a billionaire, it just means that if you're a billionaire, you want to own a yacht, and Israel is the biggest, most expensive yacht of all, and if you can own that, it means you're the richest, you're the richest person around. Just because people are a bit funny about the Jews, aren't they? They think they're kind of magic, and even if they don't really buy into the whole thing, it's sort of, well, they are a bit like leprechauns and magic in some way, you know. I'm suddenly reminded of these black, okay, these Africans. Africans can be albinos, and some of these Africans practice witchcraft, and they go a bit crazy about albinos because they want the bits and pieces of albinos because they think there's something magic about albinos because they're white. So they kind of hunt them down in order to get their bits and pieces to put in their potions and lotions. And I think deep down the Gentile has this feeling about Jews. They kind of fetishize these Jews.
It's disgusting. It's disgusting, and it's all heterosexual. Like that's just like it's. Look, Orthodox Jewry is the heterosexual essence. It's the most heterosexual religion on earth, and if fascination with it would go along with this heterosexual ethos, okay, like any society that bases itself on heterosexuality is going to have an obsession with the Jews.
Well, yes, because Judaism has the harshest penalty for and the longest list of sexual offences. They're not even supposed to masturbate, and they treat the sin of spilling seed as some kind of holocaust for each act of masturbation. So they basically make the Jew feel really guilty about a lot of sexual things, I guess. It's like they're not even supposed to fornicate because there's this famous story of Pinchas who was so angry that the Jews were fornicating with the I think it's a Moabite women or the Midianite women.
Yes.
I forget. Yeah. And there's this horrible story of Pinchas with a spear impaling this fornicating couple, and he impaled the two of them in one thrust of the spear.
Yeah.
So basically, Judaism has the harshest penalty for sexual misbehavior.
Yes, and so of course, and as you can see, as society becomes less and less heterosexual, the less interested they are in upholding Zionism. I think that, yeah, I mean, it's, I don't think the homosexual community and on a whole, even though a lot of them have been brainwashed into thinking Jews are great and that Jews deserve Israel, I mean, they're not like heterosexuals all gung-ho, the Jews are God's chosen people, and so therefore they must be restored to bring in the millennial kingdom. I don't think that's what most gay people think when they think about supporting Israel. I think most gay people think about, oh, well, the Jews need a homeland and they've been persecuted and it was their land originally, or so they say, even though it really wasn't because they stole it from the Canaanites. But, gay men don't...
Sorry, what did you say about the Canaanites?
Well, the Jews stole it from the Canaanites, so it's not their land themselves. But I'm saying that, heterosexuals are more likely to view Jews as God's chosen people and it's necessary to return them to Israel, to usher in God's kingdom and things like that. That's all.
Well, I think the presumption is that most gay people are probably atheists because they, if they really believed in God, then they know they weren't supposed to be
No, they're not
sodomites.
atheists. They're pagans and things. Gay men are very. First of all, half of gay men are Christian and Muslim and Jewish anyway, and they don't even give a fuck, and they are hypocrites and they're stupid. So first of all, if you're a white gay man born in America, the likelihood of you being a Christian is very high. I cannot tell you how many Christian gay men there are, but those who aren't Christian, a lot of them are pagans. And, there are gay atheists, but I don't even know if it's even higher than the straight population, maybe a little bit. But no, not every gay man is an atheist by any stretch of the imagination. I would say most are religious, and I would say most white gay men are Christians.
But Christians, do they really believe? I mean, I often wonder. I mean, okay, you were a Christian and you obviously, had spiritual longings and whatever. So, but okay, if you really believed, I mean, let's just, I don't know if you can pretend that you still believe in Jehovah, being a Jehovah's Witness, but if you did believe and I came up to you and said, well, have you considered that it might be idolatry? And, how would you feel? Would you kind of sort of brush me aside and say, who cares? Or I think you would brush me aside and say, who cares, if you didn't really believe. But if you did believe, you think, oh dear, that is a mortal sin, or something that you sort of remember punishment following, as about
Well,
being guilty of idolatry.
It would be harder to convince a Jehovah's Witness they're idolater because they don't believe in the Trinity. So they actually, know that mainstream Christianity is idolatry and paganism because of the Trinity. So if you went up to one of them and accused them of idolatry, I don't think that would go very far. You would have to accuse a Trinitarian Christian of that.
Well, I think, I mean, you believe in the divinity of Jesus, don't you? Don't
No, they
you?
don't. They do not. And we've gone through this, Claire. They do not. God did not incarnate or take form. Jesus is an angel. He is not a God. He is not God. God created Jesus separately and distinctly from himself and said, this is my first angel. And then that angel came down and did whatever he needed to do for humanity, but it was not God that came down. No.
Okay, so Jesus is an angel.
Yes.
And isn't there a problem with this? Because from my understanding of angels is that they don't have a mind of their own, so they just do whatever God orders, and so they are automatons.
Okay, but they're not
Or like
God.
robots or something.
They're
That
not
they
God.
just.
Okay, but they're
Pardon?
not God, Claire. You always
No,
try
no,
to
but
remind us.
I'm interested in this aspect, and I mean, it's obviously important because once upon a time Jehovah's Witnesses and Trinitarians were fighting it out, but the point is that, okay, do you know which verse it comes from, this story, or was it just made up? I assume it's in the New Testament
Well,
somewhere. This.
there's differences between the Jehovah's Witness translation of the Bible and other people's translations of the Bible, and I don't remember their exact arguments to prove that Jesus was an angel and not God. I can't remember how they do all that. He's the archangel. Archangel Michael is who Jesus is. He's not God. So we've already gone through this. You're never going to get Jehovah's. Even rabbis are saying Jehovah's Witnesses are Noahides because they lack the Trinity. Even, it's like the rabbis, even Tobias Singer kind of says you can be a Jehovah's Witness and a Noahide.
Well, I mean, I know that the Trinity is the most offensive thing of all because, they're basically saying, oh, here's this guy who was executed for blasphemy. Oh, we're just going to worship him as a co-equal of the divinity that he was alleged, convicted of blaspheming against. So it's like you couldn't try any harder to be offensive about to Jews, I guess.
No, you can't really come up with anything much more offensive than the Trinity, but they're not, they're not gonna. Jehovah's Witnesses don't fit that charge. So, and neither does Armstrongism, because he denied the Trinity, and
He was a Quaker, I read.
yes, he was raised, yeah, Quaker. Do they deny the Trinity?
Well, I think Quakers, I, they say, think of God in any way you like. That was basically Quakerism. Who's to know what God really is? So we can think of God, as a Trinity, as the others and whatever. So basically, that's their kind of worship. I think they created their weird religion as a kind of response, because I'm sure it must have been horrible for all these Europeans, being told that they have to believe that Jesus is God, and because, well, we know quite a few of them got burnt at the stake, but for some reason they just felt compelled to say, well, we don't agree with this, and so Quakerism was like, oh, we know we're going to say we believe in God, but we're not going to, we're going to make all these concepts of God optional. We can think of him as a Jew might, or a Muslim might, or a Trinitarian might, or and the basically, so that is the basis of Quakerism. So I guess Armstrong already had this idea that he could what's the word mix and match, pick and mix.
I don't really know a lot about Quaker. Quakers were started in Britain, not America, right?
Yeah, it started in Britain, and I know that they, when they got to Virginia, they were fighting with the Puritans who couldn't stand them, and that they killed each other, well, intermittently. So that was a surprise to me when I first heard of it, and apparently the stories of Nathaniel Hawthorne mentions this sort of thing.
Yes, yeah, I'm interested in how these things. Let's see about anything about Quakers and Freemasons. Hold on, Quaker Mason. Let's say, can Quakers join Masonic bodies without compromising their religious beliefs?
I believe so.
Oh, let's see. Oh, hold on. Hold on. Let's see. I just found a. Can Quakers join Masonic bodies without compromising their religious beliefs? How long is this? 6 pages, but let's see if there's a. Let's say if there's a summary. We would ally ourselves with the British position that affirmation should be available if permitted by the local Grand Lodges on the grounds that our affirmation is binding. But if we can accept the premise that a Mason's obligation is not an oath in the strict sense, an obligation, and that Freemasonry is not a secret society but a society of secrets, then this question of Quakers becoming members and active members of the craft and associated bodies is merely an academic point. Okay, well, it seems like he's kind of saying Quakers can become Masons. Actually, interesting, I'm going to start a new folder I want to start a new folder, actually.
I think the most problematic kind of Christian being able to join the Masons would be Mormons, because they don't believe in the Abrahamic God, do they?
Well, they say they do.
Well, I mean, if you look up the Abrahamic God, he has a wife. He's like Zeus or something.
Well, they believe that the Abrahamic God is one of many gods.
Is that so?
Well, yes, because yes, the Abrahamic God had uh had had a father.
The
The
Abrahamic
Abrahamic
God had a father. Oh
yes,
my goodness. Well,
the
well,
Abrahamic God had a father, and the Abrahamic God became a man on earth and lived through not this earth, but another earth. Lived as a righteous Mormon, and then was elevated to godhood and became the God of our planet. The Abrahamic God is only the God of our planet.
crikey. Well, I think it's got to stop. All these crazy cults coming from America. You know, because and also, I think Americans need a religion. I mean, they can't just be sort of making up all these stories. I mean, do you not see that it could be a bad thing?
Well, I mean, I would rather people being making up new stories than following Islam. Maybe. I mean, I don't know if I'd prefer Islam or Mormonism, but I mean,
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, if God exists, well, then you'll be, kind of angry with Americans for allowing, all these heresies. And talking about the Abrahamic God and the no-hike laws, um, I mean, do you think that the Education and Sharing Day could be seen as a sort of, promise to obey the no-hike laws, and somehow making the promise and not keeping it is worse than never making the promise at all?
well, yeah. I mean, they promise. Look, they jumped the gun and made a statement that's just not true. America is not founded on the Noahide laws with freedom of religion. It's just not.
Well, I mean, the First Amendment is arguably yeah, I mean, evidence that was what America, what the founding fathers wanted it to be. I mean, there's been documentation relied on about. I mean, they were talking about, well, could Muslims be equal citizens? Could Jews be equal citizens? And there was some debate about that, wasn't it? Wasn't there? I mean, okay, it wasn't properly settled, and they made those laws, but it had people of different religions have been treated as if they were equal citizens in law, anyway. I mean that's why you get all these cults. People think, oh, I can make up a cult of my own.
Who's Mike that said polytheists smash my head? This guy. Do you know who Mike is?
No. But you do see that just sort of thing just wouldn't have been allowed in Europe. They would have been smashed from the beginning. They would have been persecuted.
Well, yeah, Europe was more into driving out religious minorities, and America was more into creating them and allowing these cults to flourish. And um,
And so people like Herbert Armstrong got very rich. I mean, if you have a gift of the gab, you can, I think it's a kind of American Gnosticism. Have you done any research into Gnosticism?
what's American Gnosticism? Mormonism?
Yeah, and all these sort of pick and mix and match cults that spring up, and all these different churches, because I think before Constantine adopted Christianity as a Roman religion, I bet a lot of people just went around saying, Jesus is my brand. I'm going to use a brand of Jesus to sell my snake oil. And all they have to do is say Jesus this and Jesus that, and people will kind of want to hear more. And I think a lot of charlatans kind of got rich that way. And I think Constantine sort of realised that, and that's why he called all the bishops to Nicaea. Yeah, I mean, he called all the top people of Christianity to Nicaea and say, you have to agree something. We can't have all these different bishops saying one thing, and contradicting each other. You have to agree on one thing, and then I will adopt Christianity. Please do that ASAP. And they couldn't even do it. They couldn't even agree, because of the schism between Arianism and Trinitarianism. The rivalry between Arius and Athanasius. So, and this is obviously evidence that Christianity was just cooked up. This should be enough to prove to any Christian that it was all the Roman Empire just making up stuff, and they were known for doing it, because if you have heard of Virgil, who wrote the Aeneid, this was basically a kind of Roman Bible, like, we were these, we are descendants of Troy, and So the Roman myth was that the Romans were Trojans fleeing a fallen Troy, and who arrived in Italy, and whatever the story was, I can't remember what it was now, and they'd have poets like Homer to set the scene, and then you can see that there's a certain pattern to it, because of course the Quran is also poetry. And you can see why they would. You kind of wrap it up in grand poetry and literary achievement and all that, and people will be even more impressed by your scripture than if it was just really badly written, like the Scientologists, which is terrible.
You've read their stuff?
Well, just a bit online, but I mean, the language used is very banal. So I think we kind of know how these religions are created. I mean,
Claire, you should do what Nation of Islam is doing, mixing with Scientology. You should start offering e-readings and stuff. Go like into the subways with those e-meters. Do they do that in England? Here in America, they don't do it anymore. I rarely see it anymore. But when I was younger, the Scientologists used to go to the subways and they would have those e-readers. Have you ever done an e-reader with a Scientologist?
Well, is this a sort of gimmick about?
Yeah,
working?
it's like it's total trash. You hold these two bars in your hand, and they're obviously like touch sensitive. And then what they do, you hold these in your hand, and then they ask you questions. And if your hands constrict, they say, "Oh, you have like an impression there," or that's like something that really gets to you. And it's just because maybe when you think about something bad, your hands tighten a little bit. And it's called an e-meter, and they basically try to assess your like problems through these e-meters, and then they give you advice. So you could start doing that, because Nation of Islam did that. I mean, I'm telling you, you told me that the Carol Balazet cult mixture with secular Quranism got you a new listener. So I think you should start promoting Scientology and secular Quranism together.
Oh, I don't want to be mixed up in any of these cults. I know it's your malign encouragement, but I can't be doing any of that. Okay. If people are going to say, "Oh, you're so clever, you're so wonderful," perhaps you're some prophet or some prophetess. I mean, okay, I'll say, well, maybe, but I mean, beyond that, I can't possibly claim any belief system.
No, not you. It's secular Quranism. I'm saying is an add-on to Scientology, an add-on to Christian Science, an add-on to Jehovah's Witness. Like it's just you take secular Quranism and it's the legal system, but then you have some other cult provide the spirituality. So you could have Jehovah's Witness secular Quranism and Mormon secular Quranism and all this different kinds of secular Quranisms.
Oh, but haven't you noticed, Vincent, that I already kind of do have my own theological narrative and whatever, and even if it's, if God exists, he would think this and he would do that, etc. I'm kind of, already adopting the Jewish view of things. I mean, the Muslims are terrible. They don't even have a proper, system at all. But the ultra Orthodox Jews are very good, about, well, if we have to, completely believe in God, and we have to explain everything by reference to God, and philosophy is, what am I trying to say? Leibniz. You've heard of Leibniz, haven't you? Who said that we live in the best of all possible worlds. Have you heard that idea?
Yes, I've heard that idea that we live in the best of all possible worlds, but that, I mean, there's no way to prove that. And what does best mean? And people would have different interpretations. And somebody would say, this is not the best world I could think of. So, this is certainly not the best world I could think of. So I'm not going to say we live in the best of all world possible. Maybe we live in the only world that's possible because of determinism and like the physical breakdown, and nothing else would have been possible anyway, which is necessitarianism. But, I'll take necessitarianism, but not, it's spiritually, subjectively, objectively the best thing.
We just drive ourselves mad with these weird ideas like the multiverse. So if we're supposed to think that this is the best of all possible worlds because God created it for a reason, and it's something to do with his plans for us, then we would think that everything that has happened was meant to happen, and we just have to work out why. And by reference to human history, we might, have a few ideas about, certain certain historical events about, what is meant to happen. Actually, the Marx's historical materialism is kind of like that, because he's saying it is only through historical materialism that we will get to the workers' paradise that we all want to go. And historical materialism is basically two different ideas fighting each other, this idea of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. And he's saying, all these ideas will be fighting each other, and then eventually we will get to a workers' paradise through this process. So it kind of makes sense. You can't really deny that idea, can you? Because people do have fight each other, and then they have a new idea, which is a synthesis of the two different ideas that were fighting each other, and So, do you want to carry on for a bit on your own and stuff? Or
Why, you have someone there? I heard someone in the background.
yes, it's kind of dinner time.
Okay, how long do you think you'll take?
Maybe about 20 minutes or something like that.
Okay, I'll talk about the Armstrong cult and stuff like that and other things. I'll just show some things from my other blogs.
Alrighty.
Okay.
See you in a bit.
All right. Well, actually, we've been going for. I'm actually going to end this, and then I'll start again when Claire comes back. We can start a new stream on her place.